Okay, ready to dive in. Today we're tackling something pretty personal, I think, for a lot of us, especially women.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about, that tricky relationship we have with food and how it all gets tangled up with self-worth.
Right, right.
So I've got this fascinating material from McCall, an eating disorder therapist,
Oh,
and she's got this really unique perspective.
I'm intrigued.
Well, one thing she says is that, like, everyone kind of has, like, a 20% eating disorder.
Interesting. What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's what we're going to unpack.
Okay.
And the other thing, this is something I think about a lot, actually, is, our relationship with food. It's probably the longest relationship we'll ever have, right?
That's true.
But how often do we actually, like, work on it?
Right.
So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to, like, really kind of dig into that link between eating disorders and self-esteem and ultimately, like, how to love yourself. So Michelle's own story, it's really powerful. She talks about her struggle with eating disorders for like 20 years,
Wow.
which is a long time. And it all started, believe it or not, with her being this champion runner.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But the thing is, she wasn't driven by passion for the sport.
Right.
It was all about burning calories.
Yeah, that reminds me of something, it's called exercise bulimia. Have you heard of that?
I have.
Yeah, where it becomes less about fitness and more about controlling weight,
Right.
like disguised as being healthy.
Totally.
So her story is a perfect example of how that can really play out.
Yeah, and it's insidious because it can fly under the radar so easily.
cool.
And what Michelle makes clear, and I think this is so important, she's like, eating disorders, they're not actually about food at all.
Okay.
It's about these deeper emotional issues, like that struggle to feel worthy. It's like, have you ever, turned to food to kind of deal with stress or like difficult emotions?
Well, for sure.
Yeah, I think most of us have at some point.
Absolutely.
But for some, it becomes like this really dangerous pattern or,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Food can be a quick fix to sort of numb those feelings.
Yeah.
And that's where things can go wrong. She also talks about falling into this good girl trap, constantly striving for perfection, which just fueled her eating disorder.
I mean, that really speaks to, like, the societal pressures on women, right?
Absolutely.
This expectation to be thin, to be beautiful, to be in control. It's like this impossible standard.
It is an impossible standard.
It's so damaging.
Yeah, it's not even just that pressure from outside. It's that we internalize it.
Right.
And then that can distort how we see ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that fuels these disorders.
It's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And you know what struck me? Her aha moment.
Okay.
Realizing her lack of self-confidence, that was at the root of it all.
Wow.
So I think that's a big takeaway for all of us, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. Like realizing the real issue is like the key.
To recovery.
Yeah. Like identifying those underlying issues that are driving it. That's step one to real healing. It's not just changing behaviors.
Yeah.
It's about that root cause.
And Michelle's approach to recovery, it gets really interesting. She's a big advocate for like this holistic approach that goes beyond just counting calories. Traditional therapy. She talks about cold showers, connecting with nature, things that might sound a little out there to some.
Yeah, I can see that.
What's the science behind some of this stuff?
Well, I mean, it's important to approach alternative therapies, with a little bit of caution
Right.
and understand that they shouldn't replace evidence-based treatment.
Of course.
But some people do find benefits, especially if they're combined with professional guidance.
Okay, so what's the rationale then? Like, why cold showers? Why spending time in nature?
So cold showers, they can be pretty stimulating.
Yeah.
They might help regulate your mood.
Yeah.
And there are some studies that suggest that they could maybe increase your endorphins,
Mm-hmm.
and that could have a positive impact. And connecting with nature has been shown to like lower stress and just make you feel better.
Yeah.
So it's about finding those healthy ways to deal with those emotions,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And what works for you.
It's about looking beyond the surface, right?
Mhm.
Exploring all the tools. And Michelle doesn't shy away from discussing the impact of family dynamics.
Yeah.
Particularly the role of mothers.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And she really emphasizes the power of mothers loving themselves.
Right.
Because that can help prevent passing on unhealthy patterns to their daughters. This generational impact is something we can't ignore.
It's true.
It really makes you think, how much of our own relationship with food comes from our upbringing?
For sure.
A lot to unpack there.
So it's like Michelle's saying, we really got to like recognize those unhealthy patterns early on.
Yeah, you mean like before they turn into a full-blown eating disorder?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And she talks about how like even during her, champion runner days, there were signs. She wasn't running for the love of it.
Right.
It was all about burning those calories.
Uh-huh.
She even talked about, like, intensely counting calories,
Mhm.
like knowing the exact count for everything she ate.
It's like the exercise itself became a form of punishment almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. It
Yeah.
does. It becomes a form of self-harm, often disguised as, like, dedication or discipline.
Right.
And this, like, obsession with controlled and precision around food, that's a pretty common symptom of anorexia.
Really?
Yeah, it's not truly about the food itself. It's about, like, grasping for control when everything else feels chaotic.
That's really insightful. So it's not about vanity, it's about something much deeper.
Way deeper. And she would even, like, run 20 kilometers after dinner just to burn off the calories. She describes it as, like, living a double life,
Yeah.
you know? Eating in front of others and then punishing herself later.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's a cycle of secrecy and shame that a lot of people with eating disorders experience. It's really isolating, and it's hard to break free from.
And what struck me was her story about cutting off contact with a boyfriend who had hurt her.
Oh, yeah.
And it seemed like kind of a turning point for her.
Right.
Like a moment of reclaiming her power and self-respect.
Yeah, taking back control.
Yeah.
It seems like if we look at the bigger picture, it's this pivotal moment where she started putting her well-being first. Instead of channeling all her energy into controlling food and exercise, she shifted her focus
Right.
to teaching Hebrew. Like, she found fulfillment in helping others.
Yeah.
Like, she finally filled that void with something positive and life-affirming.
It's like finding that sense of purpose outside of her eating disorder.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about like the importance of a strong support system, right?
Yeah, for sure. Those students that appreciated her health, they were giving her validation, that sense of worth that she was missing.
Absolutely.
That's such a crucial aspect of recovery, you know? It's finding those connections, sources of validation, but like outside of the eating disorder.
Outside of that lens.
Exactly.
It makes you think about the people in your own life, you know? Like who are the people who lift you up? Who make you feel good about yourself?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Who are those people for you?
Yeah, it's a good one for all of us to think about,
Yeah.
you know? Like, who makes us feel seen, heard, valued? Surround yourself with those people.
I love that. Mikhail also talks about using baking for others as a way of expressing care, even though she wouldn't eat the treats herself.
That's interesting. It makes me think about how often we use food as like a substitute for expressing our emotions.
Totally.
Especially like in cultures where food is so central to social gatherings, celebrations.
Absolutely. Like think about holidays, you know, family events. It's practically like woven into our social fabric.
It is.
It makes you wonder, are we truly connecting with those people we share food with?
Right.
Or is it kind of masking a deeper inability to like say how we feel?
Food for thought, literally.
Yeah.
It's worth thinking about whether food is sometimes a stand-in for real emotional expression.
Yeah. Now, Michelle gets real about what recovery actually looks like.
Yeah.
And she says she's not cured,
Right.
but she doesn't let those moments, you know, where she automatically notices calories control her.
It's about managing it. Such a crucial message for anyone struggling, you know?
Yeah,
Recovery doesn't mean those challenging thoughts just disappear.
right.
It's about managing them,
Yeah.
not letting them run your life.
So it's a process, not a destination.
It is. And progress, not perfection.
Exactly. It's not about being perfect. It's about reclaiming your power, choosing how you want to live, free from that grip of disordered eating.
Yeah, she even has this interesting way of, like, gauging if she's slipping back into old habits.
Okay.
She says if she can't remember what she ate the day before,
Okay.
that's actually a good sign.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, she's not obsessing over every single bite.
It's about letting go of that hyper awareness around food.
Totally.
Just allowing yourself to enjoy it without guilt or judgment.
That's it. She also says that if you can stand in front of the mirror, you know, for more than 15 seconds without criticizing yourself,
Okay.
you're probably in a good place.
It's about that self-compassion.
Yeah, acceptance.
That's a great self-check for all of us.
It is.
And she's a big advocate for using nature as a way to heal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, being in nature is non-judgmental. It just accepts you as you are.
There's actually a lot of research now about the benefits of being in nature, you know,
Right,
for your mental and emotional health.
right.
Reduces stress, improves mood, promotes a sense of belonging.
It's like nature offers that unconditional love and acceptance we all crave.
It does.
A space to just be.
Yeah.
Now, we can't talk about eating disorders without talking about the elephant in the room, or should I say the feed in our hands.
Social media.
Social media. Morale's very upfront about its potential harm, especially with all the curated images, unrealistic beauty standards.
Yeah, it's this constant barrage of comparison competition, which can be super damaging to self-esteem, especially for young people
Absolutely.
who are still figuring out who they are.
And she even shares how seeing someone boast about their wealth can, like, trigger her, which might seem surprising.
It is interesting, but it's not really about the money itself, is it?
Right.
It's about what it represents, success, status, a perceived sense of worthiness.
Right.
It triggers those insecurities about not being enough.
It's like a mirror reflecting back those vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah.
Social media can just amplify those feelings of inadequacy. It fuels this constant striving for something unattainable.
Yeah, like chasing this illusion. So
Yeah.
what do we do? Do we all just delete our accounts?
Right, that's a great question. It's not always realistic to completely disconnect.
Right.
But Mikhail talks about being mindful of who you follow and like actively curating your feed.
That's good advice.
Yeah, with accounts that promote body positivity, self-acceptance.
Yeah, create a digital space that nourishes your mental health,
Yeah.
Avoid those triggers that make you feel bad about yourself.
Hmm.
Unfollow accounts that make you feel less than.
It's like a digital detox for the soul.
It is.
Maishal also doesn't shy away from the role of parents in either preventing or contributing to eating disorders.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic,
That's a
but
big one.
it's crucial to acknowledge the impact family dynamics have,
Mm,
on a child's developing sense of self,
yeah.
especially when it comes to body image and self-esteem.
And she specifically talks about the importance of mothers loving themselves
Yeah.
as a way to model healthy behaviors for their daughters. Like if a mother is constantly criticizing her own body, dieting obsessively, or expressing dissatisfaction with her appearance,
Right.
it sends a really powerful message to her children.
Totally. Actions speak louder than words,
They do.
and kids internalize those messages.
It can perpetuate this generational cycle of like body image issues and disordered eating.
It can.
So how can parents break that cycle?
Well, Michelle emphasizes open communication,
Okay.
creating a home where all bodies are valued and respected,
Right.
focusing on health and well-being,
Right.
rather than weight or appearance,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching kids that their worth isn't tied to their size or shape.
It's about fostering that sense of self-love, acceptance from a young age.
Yeah, it starts early.
What about for those already struggling with an eating disorder?
She's a big believer in professional help.
Yeah.
You know, eating disorders, they're serious mental health conditions that need specialized treatment. She also talks about finding what works for you, whether it's traditional therapy, alternative therapies, or a combo of both.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one-size-fits-all.
Right.
It's about empowering individuals to find the path that feels right for them.
Yeah. What resonates?
Totally. She advocates for connecting with your inner child,
Okay.
that part of you that's playful, curious, rediscovering that joy and spontaneity that can get lost.
Especially amidst that rigidity and control of an eating disorder.
Yeah. She even suggests something as simple as taking a bath
Okay.
and just being present with the feeling of the water on your skin, like a form of mindfulness meditation,
Yeah. Slowing down, tuning into your senses.
cultivating self-compassion.
It's a beautiful image, a way to reconnect with your body in a gentle way.
It is.
And Michelle isn't afraid to explore the spiritual side of healing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she believes in energy work, connecting with something larger than yourself.
It speaks to addressing the whole person, mind, body, and spirit in the recovery process.
Finding that inner strength that can carry you through those tough times.
And knowing you're not alone.
Right.
There are people who care.
And want to support you.
Yeah.
Speaking of support, Michelle mentions some patterns she's noticed in her clients that kind of offer clues about their struggles.
Okay.
She advises being cautious of people who excessively push food on you.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it suggests their own unresolved issues
Right.
around food and control might be manifesting in how they interact with others.
Like they're projecting their anxieties onto you.
Which is definitely something to be mindful of.
Yeah.
She also talks about using humor to connect with clients.
I love that.
Yeah. And to help them see the absurdity of their, eating disorder behaviors.
Laughter can be so powerful,
Yeah.
for breaking down shame and creating space for healing. If you can laugh at it, it loses its power.
I love that. Michelle firmly believes that, everyone has a 20% eating disorder, which we touched upon earlier. Can you unpack that a bit more for us?
Yeah. So it's normalizing the idea that most of us have unhealthy thoughts and behaviors around food and body image.
Right.
It's not about saying everyone has a disorder,
Right.
but acknowledging that we live in a culture that kind of promotes disordered eating.
So we're all susceptible to these messages.
Yeah, whether we realize it or not.
How do we know if our 20% is becoming, more like 50 or 80? What are those warning signs?
Pay attention to your thoughts, your behaviors. Are you constantly thinking about food, weight, your body?
Right.
Are you restricting, binging, purging, exercising excessively? If those thoughts and behaviors are taking over your life, affecting your relationships, your physical health, it's a sign to get help.
Right.
Eating disorders, they're serious mental health conditions. They need treatment. They're not just about vanity or willpower.
And early intervention is key. What are some signs someone might be struggling that we could look out for?
Look for dramatic weight loss or gain, preoccupation with food, calories, weight, changes in eating habits, withdrawing from social situations, mood swings. Trust your gut if you're concerned about someone.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to reach out.
Offer support. It's a message of hope, a reminder that recovery is possible. We'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive into eating disorders. Until then, keep those questions coming and remember, you are worthy of love and acceptance just as you are. So, we're back, wrapping up our deep dive with Michelle.
And one thing that really stuck with me was her emphasis on setting boundaries.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for, people pleasers,
Yeah.
It's about being able to say no to that extra slice of cake or that social event that's just going to make you anxious.
Yeah, and resonated with me because it's like she's saying you can't pour from an empty cup. Right?
Yeah.
Like taking care of yourself is essential.
Yeah, it's not selfish, it's essential. And Michelle talks about reconnecting with your body through movement, but not the kind that's about punishment or burning calories.
Right.
It's finding those forms of movement that bring you joy.
Like
Yeah.
dancing, yoga, just
Ugh.
going for a walk in nature. Exactly. It's moving your body in a way that feels good.
Yeah.
Honoring what your body needs, Rest, nourishment, connection. Challenging all those societal messages that tell us to ignore what our bodies are telling us.
Like those diet ads that promise, quick fixes and unrealistic results.
Totally.
It's like Michelle's approach is all about rejecting those messages
Yeah,
and reclaiming your power to make choices that are right for you.
absolutely. And she even talks about how sometimes she can see a client's grandmother's struggles reflected in them.
Wow. Which brings up the whole nature versus nurture thing, right?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how much is predetermined?
Yeah, it's complex,
Yeah.
Genetics can predispose some people, but the environment, family dynamics, societal pressures, they all play a role.
So it's not as simple as it's all in your genes.
Exactly. Just because you have a predisposition doesn't mean it's inevitable. We can create environments that support healthy eating habits, body acceptance, emotional well-being.
Absolutely. Michael also mentions energy healing and idea of cutting cords with negative patterns from past generations.
Oh, interesting.
It speaks to this idea of interconnectedness, right?
Yeah, like we carry the experiences of our ancestors with us. Healing those ancestral wounds can be really transformative.
It's like we carry those stories and traumas even if we're not aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some practical things we can do, to address those unhealthy patterns, to create a more loving relationship with ourselves and food?
Well, Mikhail suggests things like spending time in nature, journaling, listening to music that makes you feel good, doing things that bring you joy.
It's about filling your life with the good stuff.
Exactly. You are what you consume, not just with food, but with experiences and information, too.
Right. Self-reflection is key. What are your triggers? What are your coping mechanisms? What are your beliefs about food, your body, yourself?
By becoming aware of those, you can make conscious choices.
And don't be afraid to seek support.
Yeah.
Reach out to a therapist, a friend, a helpline. You don't have to go through this alone.
There's help out there, and recovery is possible. You are worthy of love, compassion, and healing.
That's a powerful message. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's your biggest takeaway?
It's that reminder that eating disorders aren't superficial. It's not about vanity or willpower. They're complex, and they need a holistic approach.
Yeah.
Self-love isn't a luxury. It's the foundation. It's how we heal and create a life that feels good in our minds, our bodies, and our souls.
It's a journey. There will be ups and downs. But with support, compassion, self-care, we can find our way to a place of peace and well-being.
We can.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, remember to be kind to yourselves.